Hello, everyone. Today, sometimes I sit down to paint and it's like, what am I going to paint? I could paint flowers all the time. I know a lot of you get tired of them and are kind of like, not another flower. But you know what? Honestly, you guys, I could paint them nonstop. That's just me. What I wanted to share today is lately, I've been thinking about this a lot. A lot of times we sit down, it's like, we don't know what to paint. Nothing's really inspiring us or calling to us. So one of the things I have found in the past that's helped me is just finding some things around you to maybe paint, some ways of challenging you maybe. Now, one of the things, I just did a post, by the way, too, in my community tab, so you might want to take a look at that. And it has, I don't know, maybe 8 ideas that might inspire you when you're kind of in that place of, okay, I want to paint. I don't even know what to paint. Don't know what to do, where to start. So one of the tips was, grab something. I had these little flowers here sitting on my desk. I've always got flowers sitting around. And a couple things, picking something and just challenging yourself to try and paint it. And as well, what's fun, although this flower is going to be pretty easy because it's kind of a basic color, but is to try and match the color of something you find in your home. Like grab a grape, grab a plant, grab anything that you're kind of like, ooh, I kind of like that color, and try and match it. And that'll be such a great practice in being able to create different colors. Now, I'm using the My Lane palette, as you know I love, because one of the reasons it has all these pre-mixed colors. I used Winsor Newton for years and years, still do occasionally, can't afford to paint with it every day. But what I love about this, especially for beginners, because you're going to already be so overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, how do I hold my brush? How much water? How do I make that shape and brush stroke? The last thing you need to worry about, unless it's kind of your jam, your thing, is trying to create different colors. This My Lane palette has beautiful selection of reds and blues and browns, greens, purples and blues, yellows. I know I talk about it a lot. If this is boring to you, you can just fast forward. But really, if you're a beginner, get one of these palettes. This one has the metallics. You don't have to have that. They have a smaller palette. I'll look up my link and share that with you. It is an affiliate link for Amazon. I'm not affiliated with My Lane. So anyway, this already has basically the color I need. This is like a lemon yellow. As you can see here, I kind of played with trying to match, but it was pretty easy. This is a sap green with maybe a little olive green. This, I think, has a little bit of, my flower looks a little sad, doesn't it, you guys? Oh, well. A little burnt sienna or sepia in the middle. So let's just play with that. I'm going to go in first and grab my lemon yellow, which is going to be really bright. So let me just lay the flower down here. So again, this is just something you can do when you kind of sit down to paint. You're like, I don't know what to paint. Is play with getting used to matching some of these colors. So this is pretty easy. This yellow flower is just a, oops. By the way, I'm using my, let's see, Velvetouch is my favorite. Love the way it feels in my hand, and it's short, and I just love the Princeton brushes. I wish I was affiliated with them, but they don't notice me. Anyway, this is a 6 long round. I like it along with my 8 because it's got a great long tip point on it. So I kind of like that. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add a tiniest bit of sepia to that just to warm it up a little. Because I feel like this flower, since it has some of that brown sepia color in the middle, it's almost got a little bit of that in the petals. Now that's too much, but pretty close. So let me grab a tiny bit more of the lemon yellow and pull it out, because the flower's going to have all these colors in it. So I think that's pretty close, but this is really a fun little practice if you don't really know what to paint right now. So here's the sepia on its own. And I think that's a pretty close match. I love this color because it's got some more red, like orangey type hues in it. So I think that's perfect. I could even add in a little Van Dyke brown for the very, very center. So maybe tapping in damp on damp to the center to get that, I think is perfect. And then let's play with the green. This was a pretty easy one, honestly, you guys. Sometimes I've tried to get a color and it's taken me forever because I can't quite get it right. So let's do, so again, that's pretty close. It might have maybe one side that has a little lighter green. And this was a mix of olive green and sap green. That's typically my mix. I'm sure each of you have your own preference for a green color. I love the My Lang tree green. I think it's really, really pretty. So I might just maybe add that on the side here, just to give it a little bit of depth, and then go into that olive green. Something like that, just kind of playing with it. So that is that green. And then for the bud, I'll use maybe a little sepia and yellow. I almost feel like it's got a little bit of grayish color in it for that bud. So I might even add in a tiny bit of Payne's Gray. And this is an exercise where, you know, you can kind of play and take your time here. So see that? It's kind of got, I don't know if you can see that or not. Let me lift my paper up. It's got a little bit of that grayish color in it. I don't know if that just helped or not, you guys. So anyway, I'll probably do something like that. And I even notice I'm about ready to break that bud off. I got to be careful. It might even have a tiny bit of yellow ochre in there. So I might use some of that as well, with a little bit of that Van Dyke brown. So those are, you know, I'm getting really, really nitpicky here, but this is the exercise. This is the practice right now. The next thing I'm going to do is let's just, excuse me, go ahead and do our flower. I'm going to start with the center. So this was my center, which was some yellow. Actually, I think that I just went full sepia. The other thing I wanted to talk about too, or just mention is, you know, we talk a lot about water control here. Water control isn't just like how much water you've got in your palette. I always say, like, for just in the middle, 50-50 is a good kind of place to start. 50 pigment, 50 water. But be aware too, you know, if I'm going in with a certain amount of water on my brush, so I've picked up some pigment and water, I've tapped off my brush 2 or 3 times, or maybe just scraped my brush twice. If you're going into dry paper, that's going to be different than going into a piece of wet paper. So it's just not about, this is just a fun tip about how much you're picking up on your brush, but also to be aware of, okay, I'm going on to dry paper, so I can have a little bit more water on my brush, or I'm going into a wet paint or wet paper, so I want to have a little bit less. Just some of those small things that I think if you're mindful of can make a big difference. I'm going into, by the way, I've got my wonderful Mead palette here. I already got it a little dirtied up by these, but you want to have your wash water and your rinse water. I've used recently this Mead ceramic palette because it's nice and heavy and sturdy, and I have dumped one too many of waters. So I love this one, and it's really nice. Listen, it's this beautiful ceramic, so I really like this one. go ahead and dump your brush, and then just 1, 2 is usually enough. And I'm going to go in, oh shoot, I don't want to pull that little bud off, and just paint the center here. So about 50 paint, 50 water. I'm laying the center down. I don't have any puddles, okay? No puddles, just damp on damp. Now let's go in. While that's wet, I'm rinsing my brush and scraping it off so my brush isn't completely full of water. I'm gonna go into my Van Dyke brown, which is a dark brown, and I'm just going to touch in to where the center might be, just to depict that very center there. And then let's start going out while this is damp. So I've rinsed off my brush, scraped it off a couple times, and now let's go into our petals here. So let's make this is lemon yellow, by the way, but I noticed when I was making it, it isn't just pure lemon yellow. It's got just a tad bit of warmth in it. So I added 50% pigment, 50% water, a little bit of that sepia in there. And then I'm just tapping off 1, 2, 3. Okay, and now I'm gonna start using these brush strokes to come out to make the center is a little bit more dense. And I'm drawing out some of that brown. I want that in there. I'm holding the flower a little bit to the side, so these petals are going to be a little foreshortened right here. There's my yellow. So these are a little bit longer, leaving some white space in there. Hopefully you can see that. And then what I'm going to do is just rinse my brush, tap it off on my water, and I'm going to come out for these kind of long, wonky petals. And they kind of, you know, they cross each other. They're a little wonky. So that's what I'm going to do there. And they're a lighter value. So that value on the outside, I made more like a maybe 20% pigment, 80% water, meaning just the lightness, the value. I still tap my brush. And then let's just create a few wonky petals coming out here, like that. And there you go. That's kind of my interpretation of that flower. You may see something a little different and do it a little different. Now I'm going to go into that beautiful green. And actually, while this is still a little bit damp, I'm going to go in and pick up some of that Payne's gray. My brush is just damp. It's not even wet. And let's go in, just do it right here. That Payne's gray is pretty powerful, so scrape. Can you see that? Oh, darn it. Sorry, guys. Just scrape that off and look at all the water that puddles off. And then I'm just barely going to tap in here. So pretty. Let's pick up our green that we created, and you can have your own green, because you know what, to be honest, we all see colors our own way. I've always thought that's kind of interesting. Like the green exactly I see may be a different green to you, right? It's like people who are color blind. We all see different colors. So I'm rinsing my brush off a little, tap, 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 or scrape a few times, and let's go in. And I notice this stem kind of arches a little, so I'm going to carry that through. I think it's kind of interesting too. Hopefully you can see that. There we go. And it's got a tiny little leaf coming out here, so I'll add that in. It's got a little stem. And then let's go into that beautiful tree green that I like in the My Lane palette. I just love it. It's like a kind of a lemony green, limey green. And I'm going to go right along the edge, touching in some places so it gets a little bit mixed with the green I put there. And then I'll go into the darker olive green too. And maybe tap in a little here and there just for interest. This is where this brush is so wonderful. It's got this beautiful long point at the end, and I can really get a tiny, tiny line. So there we go. Now we'll create this. Now my poor little bud, I think it's kind of dried out and dead, but I'm sure a week ago it was beautiful. So I'm using the tip coming up, and then let's pick up that brownish color again. And I think this was the color I intended. So that had some sepia in it. We'll put right here. And then I believe I added a tiny bit of, so scraping off my brush here, and look at all the water that puddles out, and just the tiniest bit of Payne's Gray. Now mine is probably that color because it's a little dead. And the bud is cup shaped. So I'm going to go in and kind of create something like this. Now wash and rinse my brush and pick up a little bit of that orangey color or yellowy color and touch in so we get some interest here. When I post this, I'll try and zoom in as much as I can so you can see some of this detail. And there we go. So I think that's quite pretty. The last thing I might add into my little flower is I've got, as you know, I love the MAB Metallics. Just love, love, love them. She goes on back order a lot, but she makes these all by hand, and she usually fills the orders pretty quickly. I'm not affiliated with her. I just love her paints. And I'm going to grab some of that gold using the side of my brush. We want to show that point some love so our brushes last forever. And I'm just going to go in and make a couple little, look how pretty that is. Let me try and hold this up because I really want you to see this, how pretty it is. I love how her metallics just, they almost like float around the paper. I love it. So just adding in a few of those little touches, I think is so pretty. And kind of catches your eye and says, ooh, I think something's there. So there we go. So I'm about done. That's just an interesting idea that you can try when you kind of don't know what to paint. Just grab something, play with matching the color, and then play with painting it and, you know, paint it in your unique style. So I'll share some more tips with, you know, what to paint when you don't know what to paint. I have a few I've just used over the years, and I hope they help you. Actually, I can't stop this video until I paint that little tiny bud there. That one isn't even opened up. There we go. I know, sometimes I'm kind of wonky, you guys. Okay, so there you go. I hope you have fun with that. I'd love to see what you're painting or hear what you're painting and what you found, and you know, what kind of inspires you. All right, everybody, most of all, have fun. I think when we enjoy and we love what we're painting and we're kind of embracing our own unique styles, I think it really shows up in our paintings. Like, I see paintings, it's like, oh my gosh, I can tell you had so much fun with that. And then I can tell the ones that get a little overworked, a little rigid, and it's like, ooh, I feel your stress in that one. So, you know, I really think when we enjoy it, it shows up in our paintings. Happy painting, everybody. Most of all, have fun. I'll talk to you soon, and thanks for being here.